Hello, everyone. It's Maggie with Minds on Mushrooms, where we're unveiling the magic behind psychedelics for mental health and addiction. Today, I am so honored to have with us Magdalena Grace. You are the head of a foundation called Lotus Throne. Oh, Throne, Lotus Throne. Thank you so much for joining me today. You are coming in from San Diego, California, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And how's the summer going for you?
It's amazing. I have to true funny story. Like when you said Lotus Thorn yesterday, at the time of this recording, yesterday was the Feast of Mary Magdalene, and I actually she's taught me a lot about the rose lineage as the divine feminine that's happening right now. And so I actually had the women hold roses and put their fingers into the thorns
Oh, wow.
to remind us that, every rose has its thorn. You can't have a rose without thorns. In fact, it's part of the deal. So it's a great kind of segue to what we, our mission and things with the Lotus Throne. But
Yes.
I'll never forget that little shift in language there. It was so fun.
Yeah, so let's get to that. Let's discuss kind of the mission behind Lotus Throne, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes so well. And I know you and I connected on this, and it's a big reason why we're talking. The mission is to ultimately open up the stigma, have conversations, and help people break the generational cycles of addiction and suicide. Be the change we want to see in the world, not just in the healing world, but the world, because I know my own journey with addiction and suicide and so much unprocessed grief and trauma. There's a lot of people that'll talk about high blood pressure, cholesterol, like it's, diabetes, like it's kind of like a normal thing. Even cancer, it's not, none of those things are fun, right?
Right.
We admit that, but they're so much easier to focus on and talk about. Whereas, you're talking about suicide, addiction has been demonized, and there's so much trauma underneath all of that. And with my own journey of wanting to die and almost going down the same path, my brother, who was an alcoholic, I know the pain and the shame and the guilt. And a lot of times, when people are left behind, like I was so many times, you feel so much of that inability to heal and just to go through life becomes so much harder. So again, bringing it full circle just to break those cycles of addiction and suicide and opening up that conversation so that, we can give hope and healing to those who are, still with us and or grieving and or struggling with addiction still.
Sure. I'd just like to ask each guest on the show, and I know it can be a mouthful, but I'd really like to hear kind of your path and your journey to this space. And, I think I was reading you do have a background in coaching. And yeah, I'd like to kind of hear how your personal journey / career paths kind of got you to where you are, and any significant stories, of course, please include.
Sure, absolutely. And, I'm born and raised in the Midwest, and my family was, very German, very Dutch of origin. And there was a lot of, how do you say this, like sweeping under the rug of conversations about our shadows as a family, our shadows as humans. We just want to be in the light and focus on the positive all the time. And so I became that kind of a person who, being raised by a single father, an alcoholic older brother, my mom was schizophrenic. So she had tried to commit suicide multiple times. So in a small rural community in Iowa, that's a lot, like a lot of pain and a lot of stuff that they just didn't have the tools to really properly support. My dad did the best he could. I've healed a lot of my relationship with him through this process, but there's just a lot of abandonment. And through that abandonment and witnessing what my brother went through, I always thought, you know what? I got to be the good girl. I can't make waves. I go to church every Sunday. I get straight A's. I became a perfectionist and a very critical, hard on myself perfectionist. So everything I tried to do, I overdid.
Mm,
Everything I consumed, I overconsumed. So you can start to see kind of these patterns. I didn't know at the time it was coming from a deep, deep sense of abandonment. I discovered through plant medicine in the past few years that that was my core wound,
okay.
and I was running from fear and not grounded, and became a binge drinking workaholic by the time
Mm.
2020 hit. I wanted to die. I had 8 friends who committed suicide. I
Oh
actually
my
started
God.
thinking, I actually, even though that was really brutal, I actually started rationalizing, well, that makes sense,
Mm.
because life is hard.
Hmm.
And if you look outside yourself for your answers, which most of us have been programmed to do through religion, school, institutions, and even me, you alluded to this, I was in health and fitness for 17 years as a personal trainer, a health coach.
Hmm.
I coached over 10,000 people on daily
Wow.
habits and how to be healthy.
Yeah.
However, that didn't stop me from self-sabotage and from, just white knuckling it
Hmm.
through life.
Wow.
And being a mom and a wife was also hard. That brought up a lot of my own childhood trauma, unbeknownst to me, in my 30s, because I didn't have a mom, and
Okay.
I didn't have like a mother father, like Archie Bunker or whatever. That's not the right example, but like
The
the
white
whole
picket fence
right.
family. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I struggled with, feeling like a worthless mom. All of these emotions and feelings that I had to just suppress my whole life, they just
Mhm.
came blaring to the surface. And I hit rock bottom in 2020 after my brother died of alcoholism. Actually, that was like a wake up call for me, because I was basically starting to go down that path myself.
Mhm.
And I realized I have a family. I know I'm here for a purpose. I feel like I'm not in alignment with that purpose. And so I had a mentor come to me. He was channeling a message from the divine, from God, source, creator, whatever you believe in. And he said, "You're supposed to heal. You're going to be a spiritual teacher and essentially a medicine woman." He didn't say that at that time, but a healer.
Mhm.
And at that time, I was a sales coach making boatloads of money, but feeling miserable inside. And so it didn't quite equate. But at the same time, I knew he was right. Like my heart, something in my soul said, "Listen to this guy, even though you barely know him."
Mhm.
And so I did. And in a very short order, the next 2 years, I went dove deep into the deep end of the pool of plant medicine, psilocybin, ayahuasca, a lot of breath work, a lot of shadow work. I
Mhm.
didn't know what shadow work was until I just happened to meet some of the right people along the path and
Yes.
started realizing I can't drink, work over, social media over, distract my distractions and medicate my medications anymore. I got to go
And
inside where all the
mhm.
answers are. And so through all of those mediums and a whole lot more, I could probably talk for hours on this story. I was able to come out of that and remember who I truly am at the
Mhm.
core of my being, remember my passion in many lifetimes, having been a healer, a witch, a medicine woman, and healing a lot of those wounds, and even changing my name to Magdalena Grace. That was
Mhm.
my chosen spiritual name, to then embody that truth in a different way and to go out to the world and share what I've learned. On top of my 17 years in health and fitness, I really work with the mind, the body, and the spirit,
Mhm.
and serving plant medicine, and also working with people without it, because it's not for everyone.
Right.
But to be able to be a facilitator of their healing and get them through grief recovery, addiction recovery, and spiritual awakening, those are kind of like our focuses. Me and my husband happen to go on the path with me.
Right. Yes, and we can talk about him. I was doing a little reading. I just want to backtrack a little. Well, first of all, I'm obsessed with your name.
Yeah.
um, Maggie, Magdalena. No, it's beautiful. I wanted to ask you, in regards to, I mean, I can relate. So the whole reason I am here where I am is probably due to my drinking and alcohol abuse. I was able to microdose and realized that alcohol was not for me and continue to be alcohol free to this day. When you were struggling with alcohol, did you turn to the medicine to quit, or do you mind sharing kind of that path?
100%. Yeah, because I respect all paths. First, I want to, say that. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we're still on the path. And, I'm always just tuning in with my alignment and my wise and healed ancestors to make sure, I'm in the right space. Because we're big into ancestral trauma. We believe and teach that we choose our bodies, we choose our family of origins, we choose our karma, which then can become our dharma. And so my dharma teaching from my karmic lessons and soul contracts that I've been healing and, unpacking these past 3 years, I wanted to heal the relationship with alcohol as opposed to simply quitting. So
Okay.
part of it, I choose to still enjoy alcohol. It's a spirit to me. My ancestors utilized it to have a spiritual, sacred relationship in an altered
Mm.
state of consciousness.
Hmm.
And I needed, though, to really understand why and why was I challenged by this? Why did my brother die of alcoholism? And so through many ceremonies and a lot of shadow work and then communing with my wise and healed ancestors, I can explain more of that later if you want me to, but the main idea was they showed me where the alcoholism journey started.
Okay.
So under the medicine and with my husband's help, because he talks to the dead, he talks to the ancestors, and he was
Wow.
there to help co-facilitate this as well.
Hmm.
I was able to find the origin story,
Okay.
and it was very different than I anticipated. My brother was there. We had a lifetime back then.
Mm.
And for us, a lot of what happened was the Christian conversion coming into Germany.
Hmm.
They forced people to abandon their faith, abandon their belief system,
Okay.
abandon their country, abandon everything
Hmm.
to go and all of a sudden it's like maybe not a good example, but if it's like all of a sudden a Republican comes into a Democrat and says, you have to be a Republican now or you're going to die.
Right.
Kind of intense,
Yeah.
a little intrusive. I'm being a
Yeah.
smart ass right now, but at the end of the day, so what happened was what the medicine showed me and my husband confirmed was that me and my brother, we were there to go and warn the villages like, hey, the Christians are coming, they have fire, they're forcing it's feast or famine, die, whatever, if you don't convert. And it was in this village where my ancestors were all about music, fun, laughter,
Mm.
and just having a good time, right? So
Hmm.
they didn't drink to escape per se.
Hmm.
They drank to enjoy and have the spirit within them to have community.
Okay.
And so they drank mead, and I can talk about that for hours too, but I won't go there. But it's a sacred divine feminine elixir. And so they celebrated each other. Of course, they're still looking at the possibility of what was about to come, but they still were in the moment and had a lot of love for each other. And so they drank, they went to bed, they didn't wake up when the Christians came and showed up, and there was people that died. There was homes
Wow.
that were burned, and they were forced to abandon their truth.
Hmm.
And when I told you my core wound was abandonment, I wanted to understand it at the deepest level because I was in the health and fitness industry. A lot of people will quit sugar or
Hmm.
they'll do the keto diet or they'll do this thing and think, oh, I'm good.
Hmm.
But if they don't understand why, they're just going to transfer this thing to that thing, like
Right.
instead of drinking alcohol, I'm going to go have like sugar or social media or whatever to like kind of numb and escape. And
Hmm.
so for me, that was the path that I chose. And to be able to understand it at the deepest soul karmic
Hmm.
level,
Okay.
to be able to see it differently.
So you were able, through ceremony and those experiences, really understand the core wound, which relating back generationally that is so remarkable. um, question, and I know you're working with your husband, who he is a shaman, correct?
Yeah,
Wow.
we're always sensitive to using that word
Yeah.
because
Okay.
there's a lot of shaman out there. There's a lot of shamanic practitioners who get a certificate, but he's actually blood for tribes in Africa. His grandfather was a shaman. They called him something else, but again, words I know are kind of a big deal, so I'm very sensitive to using words. So
Mhm.
we don't necessarily always call him a shaman. It depends on the situation, but he is shaman. Just to remind people what it actually means is he, without medicine, can close his eyes and go into other realms and communicate with the dead, remove blockages. He removed some curses from me that were ancestral contracts
Okay.
and things of that nature. And he does that, with or without medicine. And so it helps us when we work with people, especially with addiction recovery, because we just want to make sure that people get to the core of their wound. And then i
Yeah.
come in i come in and I do the shadow work, because just by hearing the truth of
Mhm.
my origin story with alcoholism and abandonment doesn't mean that all of a sudden I could see
Right.
light and I was enlightened and I didn't want to drink alcohol anymore. And it wasn't that easy.
Right.
I had to go then and go deep in my pain and suffering and look at the abandonment wound. Shadow work is not for the faint of heart.
Mm.
It's very difficult and it takes a lot of courage and bravery.
Mhm.
But in order for me to, again, heal that relationship with alcohol, which was just simply healing the relationship with myself and my past lives
Yeah.
and my soul contracts, that was where, for me, the true medicine was to like dissolve. And we believe like once you really feel something and you name it, then you can heal it. It radically shifts your central nervous system and your DNA and your cellular level. So
Mhm.
then all of a sudden, I might, instead of me looking at alcohol saying I'm going to escape unconsciously, right? I'm going to look at it. I'm going to say I want to enjoy the sacred beverage, commune with my ancestors, connect at the heart level, and
Mhm.
and have fun, but not escape. So
Right.
that was very unique and very complex, but but I knew that this addiction cycle had to end with me, because I did not want my kids to go through it.
Mhm.
And without, we believe and teach, and this is what we've discovered personally and with lots of clients now, until you get to that core and start to dissolve it and dissipate it, you're just going to pass it on to your children or the collective, because this is a collective problem. It's not just
Mm.
our ancestors.
Absolutely. Well, I amazing work for you. I guess I want to talk about some of your ceremony offerings. Um, I have a girlfriend who was just beyond. She participated in one of your ceremonies, Silawaska,
Mhm.
correct? Um, I am so intrigued by this. Can you talk to us about it's a combination ayahuasca and psilocybin. Um, can you tell me about how that came together, and if you would kind of go into detail maybe about what a ceremony might entail would be wonderful.
I'll give you context. I found Silawaska, or when I discovered it, it was actually went by the term MA, M-A, which is
Okay.
just an acronym, mushrooms and ayahuasca.
Oh,
I prefer to call it Silawaska because then you really know what it is, and Ma can be a little confusing. So just
got
a
you.
little backstory there. But
Yeah.
I sat over 50 times in a roughly a 2-ish year period, first for my own healing,
Okay.
second to train to become a medicine woman
Mm.
and have a deep, deep relationship with the medicines that I'm serving, as opposed to, there are options to get a certification. Personally, I wouldn't sit with someone who is only certified and didn't have like a deep, deep, long standing, like multiple ceremony experience. But that's just me. And that's what the path that I chose. And so through my mentors, through my teachers, all of them served Silawaska with a couple of exceptions.
Wow.
So it found me, it called me.
Hmm.
And so it was a natural fit for when me and my husband decided to walk this path in serving medicine, for us to serve that. So just give you the context of that.
Sure.
So yes, it is a microdose of Aya Vine. So it's not the full Monty ayahuasca.
Okay.
The Aya vine is actually the vine. It's it's an herbal tincture, really. It's actually legal. I coach people in microdosing with it, and it's a very embodied heart opening
Mm,
medicine.
okay.
And so we do that first to again open the heart, and then we call her grandmother Aya. She's there to work with the psilocybin to help you go deeper.
Okay.
And oftentimes, if you know anything about Aya, she can also bring up a little bit of the shadows. I mean, psilocybin can too,
Hmm.
but we have found that they anchor each other really,
Mm,
really. And
wow.
when you serve the psilocybin, then again, that dose is individual. There's no one size fits all, quote unquote,
Hmm.
prescriptive model. It's more intuitive, and we support, the person and meet them where they're at,
Okay.
because you don't want to overdose. And anyway, all of those things have been part of our training and part of our safety, first to ensure that people have a great experience. And so we usually have an overnight ceremony. Sometimes we
Okay.
even 2 day ceremonies like we're going to be doing in Minnesota this fall as part of a 8 week shamanic initiation program. We don't
Mm,
just do ceremony, we offer up a container. It's usually 6 to 8 weeks
okay.
of shadow work to start, then the 24 or 48-hour experience. And included in that is a lot of stuff. We
Okay.
get into
Yes.
the ancestral shadows, we get into breath work, Kundalini yoga, we
Mm,
do a lot of integration and meditation. And through all that, where you help them ground and make sense, make whole and complete of what messages are shared with them, both at the event in person and then weeks after. We support 30 days after, because the medicine ceremony is only 10% of the
oh, okay.
success of what we do.
Wow.
Um, that's the biggest misconception out there. You see all these people, I'm going to go to Peru and I'm going to sit
Mm,
with ayahuasca and I'm just going to come back and all of a sudden my life is going to be better. And I'm sorry,
mm-mm.
it's bullshit. It's not the rest of the story. That
Mhm,
you've got to really be mindful of preparation and taking it seriously. So we recommend people prepare at least 4 weeks in advance,
mhm,
really physically, spiritually, emotionally, as well as with the food and nutrition protocols.
mhm.
So we provide all of that. Then you have the ceremony, and then the support after. So that's also a teachable moment. I'm really wanting to make sure people know that it takes a lot more work than you realize. The
Mhm.
medicine can only do so much. The rest is up to you.
Yes, that is so, so true. And I was curious, do you, for the most part, offer the Silawaska, or are you kind of doing psilocybin ceremonies, or is it mainly the combo?
It's a great question. So for first timers, we're really, really sensitive to, how much is too much. And so we'll ask them, we'll have a conversation and offer them the ayahuasca, and we may just do the psilocybin. We just had that with a client who actually had a pretty big drug addiction and alcohol addiction path and history. So he was really, really scared to come in
Mm,
and do plant medicine, and rightfully so.
mhm,
There are people who get addicted and escape through plant medicine. I've seen that too.
mhm,
So we reassured him, you know what, we're going to work with psilocybin only. We're not going to have the other medicine. We wanted to meet him where he was at based on his history. And we do that with a lot of people who struggle with addiction paths. And if they're open to it, we still, case by case basis, will offer up the ayahuasca every time. But we first just check in with their
sure.
comfort level of all of that.
Gotcha. Um, I was also reading you do a lot of work with relationship or couples. Let's talk about that. That's kind of a newer idea to me, but I often think about um, after my failed marriage, what if I or we would have found the medicine or psilocybin is what I'm talking about sooner, just because it just offers such a shift on perspective. And again, versus running to mask with a glass of wine, facing difficult conversations or situations. Yeah, so I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And that's what happened for us. Cause at the time I hit rock bottom, I was wrestling with the idea of divorce and
Mm,
just not being married anymore. And so, cause we both, me and my partner, he became someone he wasn't, I became someone I wasn't. And we actually discovered that it was part of our karmic contract. Our ancestors showed, no, this is you chose this path of pain and suffering so you could heal it, transmute it, and then teach about it.
mm,
So all of that came through not only the medicine work, again, shadow work and having other spiritual teachers. It was a combo of so many things, but
mhm.
at the end of the day, it helped us because we did 3 couples ceremonies,
Okay.
which we now offer. So it was just me and him.
Mhm.
And like the first one was huge because he's been divorced. He's had really, really painful, I'll just keep it simple, painful
Mhm.
past relationships. And what do? We take those past relationships with us. I had a deep, deep father wound
Mm,
and, a lot of masculinity wounds. I took that with me into the marriage. And you
mhm.
marry your wounds. And if you don't understand that, you're not only doing this, you may separate and move on. And guess what? You're just going to attract someone with the same wounds. And I'm not saying that for everyone. And
Mhm.
trust me, I'm a big fan of divorce and separation and all of it. I feel like there comes a time and a place. If both partners aren't doing the work,
Right. Exact one. Yeah.
you can't make someone change,
No.
right?
Mm-mm.
So I started the path. I begged him to come in with me, and thankfully he did.
Mhm.
And so that's where we started doing the couples ceremonies. But then we also had coaches, mentors, and other things along the way to help us process and integrate. We still had a marriage and family therapist.
Mm.
Um, but as we grew together, as opposed to apart, and trust me, there's times where this still happens.
Mhm.
Every time you pull back another layer of the onion, guess what?
Right.
More stuff comes up, but we're
Mhm.
both very committed
Mhm.
to the work. And so we saw how much it helped us. And so
Mhm.
of course we wanted to help others and be able to support them. So similarly with a couple, we give them an 8-week program
Okay.
to both figure, and it's all about the individual.
Mhm.
Um, it's still about what are you coming in, ma'am, sir, or if it's a gay couple, doesn't matter. The two individuals are coming in as their own souls,
Mhm.
doing their own work, but then we bring them together to unpack what did they heal, what did they learn about their personal soul's journey, and how does that play out in their marriage, the good, the bad, and the shadowy, as we
Mhm.
call it.
Mhm.
How can you integrate that and change habits slowly over time? So we would, in a perfect world, do like 2 or 3 ceremonies with the same couple over the course of a year or
Sure.
two, and have given them other tools and ongoing support. We actually just served a divorced couple.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
I also serve combo frog medicine, and they may be divorced, but they have kids together.
Okay.
And a lot of times
Right.
can really cause a lot of pain for the children, and it can also be another ancestral curse. So they like came in divorced but united to heal together, and
Mm.
so that was really touching for us. And serving combo frog medicine is actually my favorite medicine to serve. We don't have to talk about that necessarily, but it's very cleansing, and it's
Mhm.
still very psycho spiritual. It's not a psychedelic. It's a frog animal medicine, still from the jungle, but to be able to cleanse your body and open and clear your chakras and to have this experience together, that was pretty profound to witness for them.
Oh, yes, I have yet to try combo or have combo, but I do know how powerful it is. I was at a retreat, and those who chose to be served, I think, had a much deeper experience. So, something to think about. I'm a little scared of frog face.
It's
I
a
know
thing.
it's a thing. Yes. But I hear it's kind of like the world's best Botox or something. Like, I don't know. It seems to be not so pretty at first, but ends beautifully, I guess.
100%. Yep. I've
Um,
for sure.
all right. Let's see here. I was wanting to talk about, would you be open to kind of sharing kind of how you currently yourself work and practice with the medicine? Are you someone who's still, do you have kind of a yearly plan of ceremonies? I like just to talk to someone who's so experienced, and what that looks like for you to kind of keep up with your journey and with, yeah, the work.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And what I can tell you, the medicine, it's not the same as maybe planning a health and fitness protocol, right? It's once you have, and this is my experience and my husband as well, once you have a deep, deep relationship with the medicine, you're not required to sit with it nearly as much. Again, personal decision, and I also am very intuitive with it. I'm not going to say, you know what, I'm not going to sit for the next 6 months right now.
Right.
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when the medicine's going to call me back. I will say this, I microdosed for 18 months straight.
Mm,
And then the medicine said, you're done.
yeah.
Now I have zero interest in microdosing. And now I'm working with sacred oils as another tool that I
Mm.
meditate with every day instead of
Oh,
microdosing
wow.
psilocybin or
Okay.
ayahuasca. I do have a deep relationship with grandfather Hape. Hape
Mm.
is a very, very powerful medicine that we also serve. It's optional, but we serve it inside of our ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I work with that 5 days a week. Still says that I'm in alignment to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if I feel the call, like this week, full disclosure, I am going to go and sit by myself and have a communion with the psilocybin
Okay.
to just have like a tune up because I just went through a lot of serving and a lot of being with others while serving the medicine. So this is my opportunity to do it. And I heeded the call and it was time. I
Mm-hmm.
don't turn to medicine like, someone might go get acupuncture once a month or
Mm.
chiropractic once a month. I don't need to because you also got to be careful. I have seen people do way too much medicine. I was even on that path myself because I didn't know any better. Like I was doing way too much and it dysregulated my central nervous system.
Oh, wow.
So I also encourage people just be really, really careful.
Mm.
You just got to tune in and make sure your body can handle it.
Yeah.
And make sure your nutrition, your gut health, everything, get your regular doctor checkups. Medicine is doesn't have to be utilized as often as you might think. As long as you're doing the other things to support you, you can get a lot from one journey. It could last you a really, really long time. But
Mm.
again, it's
Right.
very individualized, very personal. And since I did so much in such a short period of time, like
Yeah.
I feel like I'll be integrating for the rest of my life. And when we serve with our clients, much like the curanderos and shamans, different teachers, we do microdose when we serve.
Okay.
So I get to be in the medicine every month as I serve. So all of those reasons, I don't really have a protocol or a plan. It's just whenever the medicine calls me, and it's not that often anymore.
Yeah. I love that. I can relate. I feel when I first started my journey, kind of like I couldn't get enough after, especially the my first kind of mystical, very profound experience was just so beautiful. I was kind of wanting to just get back there, but realized, yeah, at a certain point, it'll let you know if you've had too much, or yeah, it's such a personal, individual thing. So I appreciate hearing that to know I'm on track.
Yeah.
um, Let's see here. What do you have any exciting things happening in the near future, ceremony wise, or anything with the foundation that you want to
Yes.
talk about?
Thank you.
Mhm.
So upcoming, at the time of this recording, it's July 23rd. So September is Suicide Awareness Month. So that whole month is going to be about talking about suicide awareness. And I've mentioned this before. Anyone who dies of alcoholism or drug overdose, it's a different version of suicide. So it's kind of like it covers the whole theme of our foundation. So we're going to have an event here in San Diego. It'll be a healing, inspirational speakers. We'll have vendors, we'll have healers, mental health experts, just building awareness and having a healing event with a fee at the door, and then just a lot of value. And then we're coming to Minnesota to the weekend of the Day of the Dead, since we work with the living and the dead in our
Mhm.
business, and connecting with ancestors around Samhain. If you get into Samhain, also known as around Halloween, we picked that weekend strategically.
Okay.
Even though hopefully it's not snowing that weekend when they're there, but, whatever will be, will be.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a big, similar, but probably even bigger event, a private event, but a healing speakers, lots of great things that people can go and get their own healing, but also be inspired and to share and to give back to our cause ultimately. So those are the two like big events in the fall. And then we do have a shamanic initiation program that starts October, and
Okay.
we'll have a 48-hour weekend retreat in November. And then it goes for a whole 8 weeks for people who are really wanting to remember who they truly are,
Mm.
to transmute as much of that shadow, let go of some of the baggage of the ancestors that no longer serves, and have more light and more purpose to really
Mhm.
shine their light and live out their purpose much more out loud than they are currently. So that's like, those are like the big things that are coming up for us.
Got you. Well, I'll be sure to get some details and help promote those. Both sound amazing. And how fascinating you've got space and venue in San Diego, or you're in San Diego, and then you've got a venue in Minnesota as well. That's so great. I wanted to kind of just let's touch on ancestral healing just for a minute, if you don't mind. How much is a participant supposed to maybe know, or do they have to know anything about their ancestors, or they're just coming in? And so many times are people just shocked, or can we talk about maybe some experiences? Or I'm just so fascinated in learning more. And I think that's a path I'm kind of interested in heading down next. So anything you can tell me maybe to help me prepare. Uh,
Aw. Yeah, so it's again a little bit situational, depending on the person. However, we have helped all of our clients, if they were open. First, they've got to be open. If someone's not into thinking that, ancestral healing is necessary, we don't force it on anyone.
mhm.
It's got to be, something that you believe is important, and I'll explain why it could be important through a story here in a little bit.
Okay.
But we've worked with people who were adopted.
Okay.
We've worked with people who never knew their parents. Like, I'm an
Mhm.
example of that. Like, I never knew my mom. I never knew her side of the family. So in some ways, you could almost say I was in somewhat of an adopted situation too, because I knew nothing, at least on the conscious level, until I started recognizing that I got a certification. It's a shadow work certification, and it scientifically talks about, some people talk about epigenetics or whatever.
Mhm.
I prefer to stick with ancestral trauma
Mm.
specifically. We inherit our blood, our bones, our DNA.
Mhm.
Who created us? Our parents, whether
Mhm.
you knew them or not. It has been proven that you had to have 4,000 people involved in the making of you.
Mm.
So if great aunt Tilda was an alcoholic, it actually really wasn't the addiction that she inherited. It was the unresolved ancestral trauma.
Okay.
That's what we've seen. And I'll explain. We also were taught, besides my shadow work certification, helps regress people back to their ancestors without medicine. And
Okay.
it helps them understand, oh, this limiting belief, I am not enough. Or in
Mm.
my case, this limiting like belief around abandonment, that nobody wants me. I am all alone. I am separate. I am less than. That came from my ancestors, right? And
Right.
is that example of what I shared with you
Sure.
before?
Yep.
And so you don't have to know your family per se. You don't have to know their names. Um, you just know what are the repeating patterns,
Mhm.
habits, addictions, we'll call them addictive behaviors, whatever, the things that keep coming up, but you want to repress them, you don't want to look at them, that to me is ancestral trauma. That's patterns that are in your bones, in your cells, that are so deeply wound and unconscious. Carl Jung, I've studied him. I use one of his books actually as part of my course curriculum. Those are the repressed parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at.
Okay.
And I believe that a lot of that is not just from this lifetime and your choices. It can also be past lives. And some people would argue that past lives and ancestral trauma is connected. And I'm one of those people that would agree with that.
Okay.
And so if you have, and what we do in our ceremonies, or even virtually without medicine, we have an ancestral lineage imprint, releasing process.
Oh, okay.
Where let's say you have a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and it drives you to make a lot of unhealthy decisions. Like for me, my drinking was around a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And so to be able to break up the shame and guilt and release that was what my ancestors showed me. I chose to be the black sheep in my family, to come in and heal and transmute into love, light, acceptance, peace. And so as I went through that process, then that's where the true healing could come. But I had to have that conversation with my ancestors in a ceremony. Our teacher taught us that process, and now we use that with or without medicine to really, it's going to sound weird, but you're basically saying thank you, dad and grandma or uncle Bob, you're saying thank you for showing me this shadow, this pain, this suffering. It's a collective family thing. And usually there's one or two black sheep or outcasts in the family that come through and wave their hand and say, okay, ancestors, I'm here to heal this for everybody. So as I was healing, I healed my brother posthumously. As I healed, I'm healing my sisters. As I'm healing my children, and I'm creating a new lineage that's focused on the love and the light and the respect of the pain and the suffering that our ancestors went through. Especially in Minnesota, like most of my ancestors, you were in northern Germany or Norway, your winters were harsh. You didn't know if you were going to live or die.
Right. Yeah.
Think about that. That's in your blood. That's in your cells. I'm sorry, no amount of talk therapy is going to help you let that go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love talk therapy. I still have some of that. And I've worked with trauma-informed coaches and therapists. So I've done it all.
Yeah.
But the deepest thing that gave me like the biggest, like, thank you, like somatic release was the ancestral trauma and understanding that this is why I'm here. So if you're listening to this and you feel like I'm the black sheep, I'm the outcast, nobody understands me, I'm at the family reunion and everyone's like looking at me with my tattoos going, yeah, she was always a little different. Then guess what? You're probably here to help heal the lineage and let go of the shit that no longer serves you. And it's a gift. At first I was like, well, this sucks. Why did I agree to this again?
Right.
But once you connect with the wise and healed ancestors, and we are our ancestors, I believe this, I'm just another iteration of maybe my great-great-grandfather or whatever. We're coming back to repeat history. Why does history repeat itself?
Exactly.
We're the same freaking souls who are still trying to figure it out, right? And we're never now, and this is my last thing, this is like the perfect time with the divine feminine rising and all that's happening on the planet for us. I believe there's a lot of us who chose this path to help heal the collective. This isn't just about our ancestors. This isn't just about, my children or my siblings. This is about the collective healing of the planet.
Yes.
So we can all let go of the war and the greed and the patriarchy and all of the stuff that has caused so much pain and suffering for millennia.
Yes. Wow. That was all so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I kind of do feel like a black sheep in some sense. And I mean, I guess I have a twin brother, and we kind of very differently quit drinking. he was just able to do that. I used the medicine, but I do feel that I am gaining just understanding around the addiction and around why my father's father was the way he was. So I feel like I'm scratching the surface. But yeah, I do hope that I am kind of ending this generational addiction issue. But yeah, it's so fascinating. I want to talk to you more about it. um, but yeah, I just really, really admire you and all the work that you have done and everything that you offer. Let's mention your website so people can check it out and see what's going on there.
Absolutely. So I'll give you two just for simplicity's sake. MagdalenaGrace.com is kind of like my catch-all. It explains a lot more of the whole picture. And then Lotus, it's kind of a mouthful. I know I think about changing it, but right now it is what it is. Lotus Throne
Okay.
Sanctuary.org.
All right. I will be sure to call both out when we post and get this episode out. Um, let's see. Anything else you want to add or anything else you might have?
I ultimately, no matter how much you're going through right now, just you matter. Your pain and suffering matter. And please don't give up on you. Please stay around on this planet. It always gets me emotional.
Oh,
Just don't give up on you. Don't give up on the work, and really just embrace the shadows, because they can bring you can't have shadows without the light. And the more you can shine a light with hopefully support, love, and grace and compassion, don't do it by yourself. Shadow work and medicine work, in my opinion, very strong opinion, should not be done by yourself. It's not a do it yourself thing. It's meant to be done in community, like our ancestors did. They did it in community. They mushrooms, mead, all of it, and you loved on one another. So find a community that is safe. Doesn't have to be mine, doesn't have to be Maggie's, but really just make sure you walk this path with someone that you trust, and who's someone who has experience and has walked through their own valley of the shadows to get to where you maybe want to be. So just be mindful of that.
thank you, Magdalena. I think that you have been so helpful today for so many that are curious and just want to know more information. So thank you for your time. I so appreciate you. I want to have you back. There's endless things to talk about. We're just getting started. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be in touch. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. For more information, please visit mindsonmushrooms.com. Thank you for joining the journey.